Crazy coincidences about 9/11. In July 2001, just 6 weeks before the attacks, Larry Silverstein signed a $3.2 billion 99-year lease on the World Trade Center complex. As part of the lease agreement, Silverstein took out insurance policies on the property with the coverage explicitly including acts of terrorism. Larry Silverstein had a close personal relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking with him weekly in the lead up to 9/11, according to multiple interviews. At the time, Netanyahu wasn't in office, but remained a prominent figure in Israeli politics. Notably, he was later quoted by the Haaretz as saying the 9/11 attacks were very good for Israel. Silverstein missed his usual breakfast at Windows of the World on the 106th floor of the World Trade Center's North Tower due to a doctor's appointment. His two children, Lisa and Roger, who worked with him, were also not in the building. They were both late, Silverstein said in 2002. World Trade Center 7, which housed the office for the CIA, Secret Service, and SEC, wasn't hit by a plane, but collapsed anyways.
I had the pleasure of working pretty much with every prime minister of Israel, from Yitzhak Shamir forward. I said to myself, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could own the Twin Towers? We got very, very lucky. The governor of New York, George Pataki, decided one day that maybe it would be good to privatize the ownership of the World Trade Center. So I got a call from the governor's office, and they said, would you ever consider owning the World Trade Center? It was very, very good for the family, very good for us, and we were very, very fortunate. On the morning of 9/11, I'm getting ready, getting dressed to go to the dermatologist. I have light-colored hair, light skin. The sun is a disaster for me. I can't take the sun. She said, okay, you're going to the dermatologist, you're going this morning, and you're not going downtown. We got very, very lucky. And I had an obligation to collect the insurance proceeds from the policies. A new governor was just elected, Elliot Spitzer, an old friend who I knew well. I said, Elliot, if you don't help me, I'll never collect from the insurance companies. Guess what? He listened, and he said, you know what? You're entitled. I'm going to get you the money. And in 6 months, he got me the $4.5 billion. We got very, very lucky.
You once said I was home. 8 o'clock breakfast meeting, Windows, the top of it. So my mornings were spent at the Trade Center. That particular morning, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me. Second, it became obvious that this was terrorism. My children, Roger and Lisa, both worked with me. They were on their way to work at 9 o'clock. As it turns out, had the plane struck 15 minutes later. Our firm would have been decimated.
After 9/11, Silverstein fought 22 insurers for $4.55 billion, arguing the attacks were two events. 2 planes equals double payout. Eventually, he got a $4.55 billion payout. 19 men armed box cutters directed by man on dialysis and a K-Fortress halfway across the world using a satellite phone and a laptop directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering passengers and military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being hit by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon and the Budget Analyst Office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before on 9/10/2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew who did it within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
For some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theories demand an investigation into the greatest attack in America's soil and history. The investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of World Trade Center 7, Able Danger, P-Tech, Sybil Edmonds, OBL, and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, Bush administration, and as for Bush and the Shinny, well, no one knows what they told because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. And pin blame on all people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job. Determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, NRO, the DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed the records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just a routine part of record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for the model of the World Trade Center 7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made the model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to the investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her, and her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet, employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in the daring SEAL team raid, which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist, in which these special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. than a couple dozen of that team's members passed in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. A little problem is that several of those 19 men, according to the stories published by BBC and British newspapers, are still alive. For example, the 9/11 Commission named Walid al-Shehri as one of the hijackers and reproduced the FBI's photograph of him. It even suggested that al-Shehri violently poked one of the flight attendants shortly before Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower, but as BBC News had reported 11 days after 9/11, al-Shehri, having seen his photograph in newspapers and TV programs, notified authorities and journalists in Morocco, where he works with his pilot, that he was still alive. But if there are various problems with the government story about the hijackers, surely it proved the case about Osama bin Laden. As far as this belief is held, it is also a myth. Secretary of State Colin Powell promised shortly after 9/11 to provide a white paper giving this proof, but this paper was never produced. British Prime Minister Tony Blair did produce such a paper, but it begins with the admission that it does not purport to provide a prosecutable case against Osama bin Laden in a court of law. So evidence good enough to go to war, but not good enough to go to court. And although the Taliban said that it would hand bin Laden over if the United States presented evidence of his involvement in 9/11, Bush refused. Failure to provide proof was later said to be unnecessary because bin Laden, in a video allegedly found in Afghanistan, admitted responsibility for the attacks. Confession is now widely cited as proof, although the man in the video has darker skin, fuller cheeks, and a broader nose than the Osama bin Laden and all the other videos. We again seem to have planted evidence. There are moreover other problems in the official account of Osama bin Laden. For one thing, in June 2001, when he was already America's most wanted criminal, he reportedly spent 2 weeks in the American hospital in Dubai, was treated by an American doctor, and visited by a local CIA agent. Also after 9/11, when America was reportedly trying to get Osama, whether alive or not, the U.S. military evidently allowed him to escape on at least 4 occasions, the last one being the Battle of Tora Bora, which the London Telegraph labeled a grand charade. Shortly thereafter, Bush said, "I don't know where bin Laden is. I really don't care. It's not our priority." Following the September 11 attack on the World Trade Center, 5 Israeli nationalists working for an Israeli-owned moving company just outside New York City were arrested on 9/11 after they were observed taking photos of the burning towers, dancing, high-fiving, and holding up a lighter. They were detained with $4,700 in cash in their socks, multiple passports from different countries, and a box cutter. After a Freedom of Information Act request into the investigation, only 14 of over 70 pictures were released, and all the information into the investigation was heavily redacted, and most videos talking about it have been scrubbed from the internet. But in a photo they took the day before, on 9/10, showed one of the men holding up a lighter with the towers in the background, and then a photo on 9/11 showed the same image composition with the burning buildings in the background. Although their polygraph tests questioning if they had previous knowledge of the attacks were deemed inconclusive, and they deported the men back to Israel for earning income in the U.S. without work visas.
Round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
Urban Moving owners, Dominic Sutter and his wife Ornette Levinson Sutter, ran the company like a criminal enterprise. And this was an open secret among Israeli nationals. Basically, that the Israeli system over there, the moving system, that you start to move with one price estimate and then start to charge for every box for everything, anything you ask for. The most senior of urban employees arrested in 2001 recalled to this reporter 2 decades later. And when it goes into storage, then the clock starts to tick. For every night, for every day, if you don't pay, you don't get your stuff. And that was the big system. Although the urban moving owners, Dominic and Ornette, fled to Israel right after 9/11 when the 5 men were detained for high-fiving, they were never charged with any crimes, so the couple returned to the U.S. in 2003 and have lived there ever since. One of the quintessential freedoms is the freedom to move about the country, to change homes, careers, and in essence, change their lives. Those defendants struck at that freedom and used the victim's own personal property to extort money. U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Marcos Daniel Jimenez, said in 2003, while some of the suspects were successfully prosecuted for their crimes, others fled to Israel before they could face justice. One of these men, Zion Raqqa, told reporters before he fled the U.S. that the indictments against him and the other Israelis were motivated by prejudice against Jewish people. And let's talk about the Austrian art group who had access to the towers, who said their big art project was going to be revealed on 9/11, and the name of the art group was originally named Gelatin, now Gelatin, which is the name of industrial explosives that are used in the controlled demolition of buildings. They also wrote on their website that their Twin Tower art display was conspiratorial. Everything in this video is completely alleged for entertainment purposes only. This is a story of 9/11 brought to you by the media, which told you the hard truths about
Head could be seen to move violently forward.
and
They took the babies out of the incubators.
and
Mobile production facilities.
and
The rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about the story, you are batshit paranoid, tinfoil, dog-hitting, baby hater, and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pies, and your grandma, you will never ever express any doubts about any part of the story to anyone ever. This has been public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSN, White House, and IST, and the 9/11 Commission, because ignorance is strength.